Hello, everyone. My name is Shiho Hashimoto, and I am the Marketing Director at SSH Communications Security. Thank you for joining the webinar titled Just-in-Time Access Control. We'll be answering to any questions you may have at the end of the webinar, so please write your questions to the question box that should be visible in your webinar pane. I'll also distribute the slide deck that is used today at the end of the webinar using the Hands Out section, also in the webinar pane. Our speaker today is Kalle Jääskeläinen. He's the Vice President of Enterprise Key Management Division here at SSH. He has more than 15 years of experience in information security services, R&D, and product management. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic now to Kalle.
Thank you, Shiho. So, as Shiho mentioned, today we're going to talk about the just-in-time access and how the SSH access governance will be transforming when we move into a traditional environment to the DevOps world. So, what we're going to talk about today is the transformation that we are all in. So, there's a past, there's a future, and on today's topic, we're going to focus on the DevOps, how the DevOps will change the game. Especially from the SSH perspective, and therefore we're going to tell you a few words about the SSH client server, what it means, what is the current situation, how to get yourself into a more controlled stage, and then how to make SSH access into your business enabler into your fast-paced DevOps world. So let's start with the current state analysis. So where do we stand today? Most companies are still in a bit of a denial when it comes to the SSH access. So the question is that would you care if I told you that you have access to your most critical infrastructure and applications that, first of all, the users can provision by themselves without any governance, that provision access never expires, the access cannot be fully tied into an identity, and this self-provisioning, never expiring access has been there for years and still going strong. What the access is, what that we're going to talk about today is access related to the SSH user keys. So I'm sure most of you have heard about SSH, maybe even SSH keys. The SSH keys are credentials. So SSH key is a key pair that form a credential that grant access to a servers or services. The SSH key pair consists of a private key that is basically your or a batch account's identity. And then there is a public key part that is, in analogy, it is basically the lock to the door. So basically, the key pair consists of two pieces, one piece being the identity, and the other one being the lock that basically grants the access. Another angle why you should care and why the topic is extremely important for people to understand. SSH Secure Shell Protocol, it's basically everywhere providing secure terminal connectivity, securing file transfers, and tunneling capabilities over the encrypted channels. And the problem is that it is just everywhere. On the storage devices, network devices, database servers, critical servers, part of the provisioning processes, part of the modern tools like GitHub, Jenkins, Chef, monitoring tools, applications, interactive usage, and automated usage. So SSH has become the de facto standard for providing secure terminal connectivity and secure file transfers. The problem is that these self-provisioned keys have been provisioned all over the world or all over the place. And as we are talking about the encrypted channels, there is no way to identify whether the keys are actually leveraged by the valid users or a group of users or malicious entities, malicious users, third parties, and so forth. So where do we stand today? As explained before, SSH keys are basically static key pairs that users provisioned that never expires. Have been provisioned by admins over the past 20 years without any kind of a governance. And over the years, this has grown into a significant problem where a large environment, you have really no idea who's able to access where, what access is good or bad, whether the access is active or obsolete. More importantly, it proposes a significant risk, but also a compliance factor because you have no idea whether you are compliant or not, what comes to the segregation of duties, cryptographic policies, configuration policies, and so forth. Another challenge is the cost factor. So it's all manual, all manual work for now, labor intensive with human mistakes. That's the current state analysis. If you take a well-established vertical on-prem environment, even the virtualized environment, and this has been the way of working for the past 20 years when it comes to secure file transfers and secure remote connectivity. If we take one step forward into the DevOps and modern automation stacks, that's kind of the topic of today, we see that there is a bit of a resistance. So from denial into a resistance. Why there is resistance is that many companies think that by moving into DevOps, by modernizing their stacks with full automation, they are going to resolve all their access management problems, and that's probably not the case. Just to set the stage, why people are going into a DevOps, why people are going into a continuous delivery. There's a very good source for the DevOps information called DevOps Guys, and this is just their quote from their webpage, that basically DevOps has been proven to increase the speed, efficiency, and quality. These are the key things that companies will try to achieve when they are moving from, let's say, from more traditional ways of working into a accelerated DevOps and continuous delivery. How DevOps and continuous delivery work is that basically it is a continuous cycle of development and testing and deployment. So that's kind of the core function of the DevOps. You develop, you test, and you deploy on small incrementals on a very automated fashion as much as possible. This gets you a fast time to market. This gets you a lot of benefits of the qualities. If you fail small, you fail fast, kind of an approach. Then, of course, the later stages is that you monitor the environment, you gather the feedback, and then you further develop. So kind of it gives you a much faster pace of developing new functionalities and get into the market. The reality is very different. So what we're seeing on our customer base is that the DevOps and cloud adoption is just like children running with scissors. So there's much more speed than actual understanding of what should be done. And this is an unfortunate case, and this brings us into the first chapter of this webinar, that there is a significant portion of, there's a significant risk, significant portion of the access credentials in the existing environment that basically you just need to get under control before jumping into a faster paced DevOps model. So how SSH plays in the digital transformation and in the DevOps play. SSH is basically the plumbing that works from the user's workstations into the DevOps processes all the way to the cloud and digital transformation. And here's an example of the modern automation stack where SSH plays a very critical role. If you take a look at the DevOps development process, is that there is a code developer that basically commits their changes into into the source code repository, typically GitHub or a similar. I would say that 99% of the cases, the people are still leveraging SSH and SSH keys for connecting or from their workstations into the GitHub repos. Then basically from the GitHub, it goes all the way to the Jenkins for continuous build, unit test, and so forth. A lot of the Jenkins uses SSH to a certain degree, and a lot of the testing frameworks, automated building environments, and so forth are very much leveraging SSH as the core functionality, as the pipe that basically ties all these steps together. Once you're done, when you pass the test, when you get approval to a release, probably on the DevOps environment, continuous delivery environment, your releases are deployed into a pre-prod and into prod using Chef, Ansible, Puppet, Blade Logic, or a similar provisioning orchestration tool. What is the channel? What is the tool of choice for these orchestration tools to provision their updates? It's SSH. So again, SSH and automated access using SSH keys playing a critical role in order to be able to connect to the rest of the infrastructure and get those keys provisioned all over the place. Moving forward into the topic why SSH access controls are crucial to the infrastructure. As explained on a previous slide, SSH is kind of the plumbing that connects all these applications, all the users and workflows together. And it has been the way of working for 15 or so years. And as we all know, habits are hard to break. So we see that there's no need for actually changing these operations. It is a good tool. It works across the transformation as well. So why change to anything else if you already have a working approach and a working workflow inside your processes? We're seeing 3 stages on our customer environments about the cloud adoption and the DevOps adoption. The first one is the lift and shift, where basically customers are just wrapping whatever they have on-prem, and they are just moving that into a cloud environment. So meaning running the same package, but just on someone else's computer. Maybe the most common way is a partial refactoring, which means that the market-facing tools, systems that basically are benefiting the most out of the continuous delivery and continuous improvement are basically refactored into the DevOps processes, whereas the more traditional applications and the backend processing are still kept as is, or then just lifted and shifted. Of course, the end game with all is to go purely cloud native, and we're seeing some customers actually going this approach. And if you do have a greenfield operation where you can start from scratch, yes, makes a lot of sense to go into a cloud native. The challenge is that most companies are well established. They have their legacy, they have their virtualization, they have their future. So how to tie all these pieces together instead of just jumping into something new and forgetting the past. So the third stage is try to identify the ways forward. So going from resistance into the learning and finally into an acceptance and resolution. The first thing we do recommend and we see in the market space is to get your existing environments under control. As mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, there are hundreds of thousands or even millions of access credentials that are in your environment without any kind of a governance that poses a significant risk and compliance violation. So first thing first is to get visibility and structure with the reporting capabilities, policies, define how you want your environment to look like, discover the environment, and then provide a continuous monitoring to make sure that the environment stays in a decent shape. Lock down and remediate, basically clean up the environment. What we're seeing in our customer assessments is that up to 90% of the keys are actually never used. And that's basically a challenge in the environment. If you just lift and shift the whole environment, you are also lifting and shifting 90% of those access credentials that are unused, obsolete, or policy violating. So before lifting and shifting, before refactoring, make sure that you get your existing infrastructure under control and according to your policies. That's the step one. When you get your existing infrastructure under control, it's time to transform. And cloud transformation, DevOps, continuous delivery, it also means access management transformation. Here's a motivational quote from Piston Cloud. We showed this on our previous webinar as well, but I just want to share this with the people who didn't make the previous one, because this makes all sense, and this is basically how we are seeing the SSH access transformation happening as well. So the point here is that in today's data centers, the servers are treated like puppies, individual entities, and when the server gets sick, you connect to that, you basically try to fix it, and then basically everything gets into a halt. How the cloud systems are working is that you basically, instead of treating your servers like puppies, you treat your servers like cattle. So basically you number them, and when one of your servers gets sick, you just get rid of them, and the rest of the servers can keep on moving. So kind of a complete different mindset, that instead of focusing on the individual servers and trying to fix those, focus on treating your server farms like cattle. And this leads us into a just-in-time role-based SSH access. So if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, the example of an SSH key-based trust was Joe from Linux One machine is able to access Oracle account on the Oracle One server. Instead of this, on the just-in-time role-based SSH access, we say database admins can access database servers. So instead of dealing with individual users and accounts and individual servers, we deal with the roles of database admins and the roles of database servers. What the market needs is just-in-time role-based access governance, where we can leverage the existing customers' identity management tools, Active Directories, cloud service provisioning, groups, and structures. The key drivers for us further developing the SSH access into a more DevOps suitable way are these following market needs. So first of all, the most dynamic, elastic component of the DevOps and on the cloud is the server and the instances. So what the market needs is a minimal static server configuration changes. The more static you can make those configurations, the easier it is to provision, the easier it is to include those changes and those configuration requirements into the golden builds, into the building stacks, and so forth. So it gives cloud suitability and scalability. What's also seen as a market requirement is leveraging existing technologies. Many companies are leveraging Active Directory on-prem, Azure ADs, AWS similar, or then the good old LDAP, as well as OpenSSH is the de facto standard that comes with every Linux instance, whether it's on-prem or cloud. As discussed already earlier, one of the key requirements in the future is to be able to provision access on a group and role basis, to give efficiency, to give better control in centralized fashion. Fourth one is that access credentials should be created on demand, just in time. and that's the topic of today's webinar. So one of the challenges we see on the, let's say, traditional way of SSH access is that you need to have those keys all over the place, on the disk, on the file systems, on the USB sticks, wherever. We see that access credentials should always be created just in time, on demand, when needed. No access or single use, or let's say for 1 minute, we can basically get rid of all the revocation challenges because the access token is only valid for a very short period of time. That gives a security and simplicity in the environment. What we do at SSH Communications Security, so just a brief update to who we are and what do we do, and then a following slide on how we are moving SSH access into this DevOps and cloud transformation. So SSH Communications Security, we are the original inventors of the SSH protocol, Secure Shell protocol, back in 20 years ago or so. And since then, we've been basically building a trusted access security platform that basically covers the whole security of data in transit and boundary protection, meaning secure file transfers and so forth. We built a centralized management platform on top of customers' infrastructures for managing their existing, let's say, traditional SSH key problem to help them remediate the situation and get things under control. We provide a monitoring and controlling capabilities to see what users are doing inside their encrypted channels. And then the newest piece that I'm going to demonstrate in a bit is called SSH DevOps, that basically provides that role-based access controls for the cloud and legacy environments in a hybrid mode. Then, of course, everything works over the API as any modern application work. And then, of course, we also have services and consulting to help our customers and with our subject matter expertise around the matter. Let's move forward into the SSH DevOps piece. That is kind of the beef of today's webinar. So the purpose of the SSH DevOps module is to provide a just-in-time role-based access for SSH. The unique differentiator of SSH DevOps is that it basically addresses the full SSH access stack. It works for interactive users, works for automated processes. Everything can be decided on the role-based access controls, leveraging the existing Active Directory, LDAP, or so forth. And you can basically do everything with a very static server configurations. So once you provision or deprovision access, you don't have to touch the servers at all. It works on a cloud instances and services. It works on virtualized environments. It works on the legacy Linux and Unix machines, your Solaris 8s and your AIX 5.3s. And it also works on the network devices, your firewalls, routers, switches, and so forth. So the value here is that you can basically leverage your existing AD, LDAP, role memberships, group memberships to provide a full role-based just-in-time access across your whole estate. Just a very brief summary of how the DevOps works is that the user is connected into the SSH DevOps module that validates the user's privileges and roles against the Active Directory or an LDAP or a similar. The user gets a OpenSSH certificate that includes the user's roles, and then it gets the principal keys valid for the user's role. So basically, with this token, I'm able to leverage these roles on the target servers. So basically, the authentication process is fully handled on the client side of things. With this, the user can then leverage these tokens in order to access the cloud services that are leveraging the more modern certificate-based approaches, or on a traditional way, leverage SSH keys, but on a role basis. And if the role doesn't really match of what the user had, then the access is automatically denied. So zero changes on the target infrastructure and full control in the AD. The value here is that you basically take this whole authentication process away from the user's hands and put that into your centralized repository without the need to touch and update the target servers on a continuous basis. At this point, let me jump into a real quick demonstration of the Ordain, just to kind of get you a better feel before we wrap up. So here I'm on my Windows machine, typical administrator, using a PuTTY client that is, let's say, the de facto standard for SSH access. Privileged user, I'm logging into a target server. It asks me what kind of credentials I want to ask. Okay, I'm the high privileged user. I need to do some serious maintenance. I log in as a root account, and then basically my credentials were checked against the Active Directory, and I got access to the Linux machine with root credentials. Now, if for some reason I moved into another department, I leave a company, and so forth, the challenge with the traditional keys is that you have to go and find all my keys in the environment, and that is basically impossible. In this Ordain setup, in this SSH DevOps setup, basically what I can do is I can just modify my group memberships here on my LDAP, could be an AD, could be whatever identity management tool you have. So now I took myself out from the privileged group, and then basically the next time I'm trying to do the same login, accessing as the root role, it prompts me for a password. So at this point, I'm no longer part of the root everywhere group, meaning that I didn't get the right tokens in order to access the server. So this is just a very brief demonstration of how the role-based access controls can be made to work in SSH environments using legacy and cloud without really changing the user experience nor the tools that are used in the infrastructure. Key takeaways before we go into the questions and answers. First of all, denial disbelief. If I can see it, it can't hurt me. We're seeing this a lot in the market space. People are a bit of a denial. They don't really fully see the importance of these critical credentials until something bad happens. You go into resistance, so you realize, okay, situation is what it is. What should we do? The pain is not going away when we move into a cloud or DevOps. We're just bringing the problem with us. So something has to be done. And then basically with these kind of tools, with these kind of new models, it's not going to be sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows everywhere, but at least there will be one less concern when it comes to the critical access of the critical infrastructure. That was about the presentation that I was about to share with you guys. I hope you found the information useful to your business. And then I'm now handing over to Shiho for some real quick questions and answers.
Yes, we have a couple of questions here. So first one, how does your solution differ from other Kerberos-based AD bridging solutions?
Right, so there are certain tools available that are leveraging Kerberos on the server side, either built-in OS level Kerberos or commercial tools. The main difference is that we don't have to Kerberize the target servers. So basically the target servers are static, and we also support, let's say, the legacy devices. So this is kind of very much complementing the Kerberos-based approaches by leveraging the same AD-based credentials into your legacy infrastructure, network devices, and so forth. So the main difference is that on this approach, the authorization and authentication is done on the client side of things, whereas on the Kerberos, it is the server who connects to the centralized service and validates the user.
Okay, then another one. Do you see SSH being used in containers?
That's a very good question. So as we are moving into the automation stack, a lot of the development is also moving into microservices and containers. There's been some discussions whether SSH should be used on containers or not, or if you're using SSH on containers, you're doing it wrong, kind of approaches. And that is partially true. If you have let's say the real hardcore containers that are only serving a single purpose, SSH is not needed on every container. However, SSH will be needed as part of the application as one of those containers that are basically providing the troubleshooting connectivity to the outside world. So maybe the quick answer to this question is that SSH will still play a very critical role on the Docker-based applications and microservices and services, but SSH is not necessarily required on each and every small Docker container.
Okay, thank you. We don't seem to have any more questions at this time. So I've now uploaded the slide deck to the handout section, so please feel free to download that. I'll also be sending email to all the attendees today with the slide, as well as a recording of today's webinar if you would like to review it once more. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the end. I hope you did enjoy Kalle's short talk, and thank you, Kalle, for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you on my behalf as well.
And if you have any questions or would like to share more thoughts on this topic, please feel free to then reply to me when I send you the slide deck via email as well. Once again, thank you, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.